Hello and welcome to Decorative. My name is Mary and this is Wes. And tonight's episode is episode 43, and we're talking about inspiration, or inspiration leads to creativity. Or I think we're going to title it inspiration, honestly. Because there's so many different... Creativity. I think it's inspiration, because for the most part, as when you start as rod builders, you get inspiration from other rod builders, right? You see them doing cool stuff and you're like, oh, I really want to do that, or hey, I really like what you're doing there, and kind of you start delving into trying to figure out, can I do that? Maybe asking questions about how you did that, and you draw from what you can see done, because when you first start something, you don't really know everything that you can put on a rod, right? You know the basics. You got your grips, you get your guides, you get some trims. That's about it. Real seat, but all that.
Well, you see what a lot of mass-produced rods have done, too.
Right. And it's always a better idea to start simpler, start simple, learn how to do it the right way, learn how to do it the correct way, and then start moving up as far as what you want to do and what you kind of fall in love with. Like, there's going to be something that everybody gets excited about, whether it's doing a wrap or it's doing grips, or some people really like to wrap guides. I'm not one of those people.
Not at all.
People get excited about marbling. People get excited about feather inlays. There's so many different things that they get excited about, and then they start focusing on that, right?
Yeah.
But for me, I like to draw inspiration from a lot of different places, because I get on Pinterest, or I get on TikTok, or I get on YouTube, and I go down rabbit holes. I'm watching other artists do their hobbies, and I'm like, man, that's so cool. How can I implement that in rod building, And it all basically started, the chaos that is Alice started with paint pours, trying to figure out how to do marbling. I knew at that point in time, 2 years ago, I wasn't good at marbling, because I hadn't sat down and actually focused on doing marbling. Like, I saw that he was an expert at it right off the bat, and I was like, I'm gonna let him do his thing because he's good at it, and you are good at it, don't play.
Okay.
You've got great marbling. And so I never really focused on it. I was like, I want to do something fun, and I had gone down a rabbit hole of watching paint pours on Pinterest and YouTube, and also on TikTok, and I thought, this is so cool. How could I do that on a rod? And there's a whole series of videos that I put out that are me experimenting with it, and one of the paint pours that I actually had success with is right there. That was one of the paint pours. That was actually the third version of the paint pours that I tried, and I was really, really excited about how that one came to look. It definitely has some cool effects in it, and it didn't do what I wanted it to do. I saw where they had poured a background, and they obviously had let it dry, and I didn't think to do this. And then I came back and I poured just black and white. And obviously this, as I did the pour, I poured it from up to down, so I'm holding the PVC vertical and pouring down it, and then threw it into the dryer, and then came back with the black and white, and this is what ended up on there. And some of the base colors that I had, like that orange, wasn't even in the actual pour. So the colors, as they started to mix together, created some chaos. The actual colors are at the end of it. Those are the colors that I poured with. So there was like a turquoise, a pink, I think a yellow, maybe a green. And I taped, you can see I got a clean edge there because I taped it off. One, how was I going to do a paint pour and not make a bloody mess on the components and stuff? So obviously I was going to try it on PPC to see if it could be done. And then two, I really wanted to kind of throw that black and white aesthetic in there. But out of the 3 or 4 that I played around with, this one was the most successful and the prettiest. And all that is just acrylic paint that has been thinned. They have specific paint that is called pouring acrylic, And what it is it's just acrylic that's been watered down. So if you don't want to, if you've got a bunch of acrylic paints because you've been playing around with marbling or something like that, you can take a little bit of water and thin it to where it will flow a little bit easier, and you can kind of play around with paint pours. I also then took that paint pour idea because I was watching these people do paint pours, and they're just dumping massive amounts of paint underneath of their canvas, and some of them were saving it, and somehow I got down that rabbit hole, and I was like, well, how, there's so much of this stuff that's left, how could I reuse it, because I don't like to waste materials, and it's a lot of paint that gets dumped off gets dumped off of that stuff. And so as it would dry, you would give it like 3 days to fully dry, and if you had it under a trash bag, like a trash bag underneath of it, you could peel it off the trash bag, but you ended up with that texture from the trash bag if you didn't have a smooth one. And so what I started doing was getting the sheet protectors and pouring the extra from the cups that I was playing around with onto the sheet protectors, and then would end up with things that I could manipulate. So not that one, go to the other one. This is what was left from that paint pour that I just showed you on the other blank. So I had pinks, turquoise, and yellows. That was the original color from the other one, but you can see an orange popped up into it as well. So all I did was peeled it off of, I think that one was on a trash bag. I peeled it off of the trash bag and stuck it to the PVC. The paint pour is super sticky. So I was watching these women and men put these on fruit. They'd put them on like anything. You could get it, it would just immediately stick. The biggest problem is trying to get it off of there before it gets on there. Now this one, I did not cut it pretty. I didn't know if it was going to work or not. You can watch 100 people do the same thing, and then when you try to do it, it's like...
It's completely different.
It doesn't work. But it worked. It literally got stuck on there. I didn't use CP, and just the tackiness that was from the acrylic paint stuck it right on there. I went, cool. That means that we can marble flat if we really suck at trying to do it 360, and then we can go back and add the marbling, which is what that other section up there was, is where I did a couple practice pieces just playing around with different pulls and things of that nature. And then that's what dived into me being able to cut little pieces out and use them as trims and put them in a wrap. It definitely opened up a whole new way to do a decorative aspect. And that all came because I was trying to figure out marbling off of the rod, doing it a different way, trying to just come up with something a little bit different. And that was a whole rabbit hole. And it was fun to do that, but I had to stop doing it because I had to, focus on other stuff. But out of marbling, paint pours is an option. Somebody out there can take the time to practice it. You can come up with some really cool stuff. Obviously, it can be done, and it looks really good. And, maybe you get a crazy looking background and we can come back and put an open wrap over top of it, or, that could be the main aesthetic, whatever you want to do with it. So there's different ways to, the only thing with the paint pours is if you're going to try to pour it this way, straight down, is you do have to figure out how to keep the rest of your rod from getting covered in the paint, or do it before you glue everything on there, and then just kind of work around it. Once that was on there with just the acrylic paint, then we came back and put epoxy over top of it, and I threw them. Those sat outside for like 3 weeks, and there was no change to the epoxy or to the acrylic paint. Now, obviously, 3 weeks sitting outside is not exactly a full-blown test, but I pulled them back in because the kids were trying to tear them apart. So
they become batons and spears and...
They like to hit things with them.
Javelins.
So that was one little rabbit hole that kind of took me somewhere where I learned something cool. And then I was also, on the other end of that, we have always had snake skin incorporated into builds before, right? 2 years ago, 2 or 3? 3 when I did 3 years ago when I did the koi build.
3 years ago.
3 years ago. Yeah, so for the International Challenge I did, it was called Dragon Gate. It's based off of the myth where if the koi can jump through the 3 waterfalls, they get rewarded by being transformed into the golden dragon.
The myth of it.
The myth, yeah. Actually, Wes sent it to me. He saw somebody do it, and I went back and watched the video. This chick was pouring, she was using snake shed, okay? Not the skin, the shed. And we've always been told, prior when we did the snake skin episode, that the sheds were doable. You just had to be really careful with them.
Yeah.
But prior to that, all I knew was we didn't really mess with them because they were so fragile. She was taking the snake shed and she was coloring the snake shed. She painted hers black and then took mica powder, and while it was dry, but it was tacky, and colored it. And then she dunked it inside of, she was doing a dice for something. She stuck it in there and put resin around it, and when she pulled it out, you could see the colors on the snake skin, or the snake shed. And I thought, oh, you can color snake skin, snake shed. But and then when these two kind of tie together, because the koi build that I did for Dragon Gate, I actually painted the back of snake skin to kind of very subtly come through so that it would look like the koi's colors changing into the golden dragon. And so all I did was just ombre the back of it to do that. But then I did a test where I used snake shed, and it was very sloppily done, but the point of it was it can be done. So I painted it black and then put the mica powder on it. The only thing, and this is where I will say it gets really messy, is I didn't seal it with CP. So, Wes, if you'll turn it. As you can see, as I put it down with the CP, it started to pull the colors off of it. So I think this is one of those things where you'd have to probably drop CP on it, but not really like rub it in, if you will. I still got to do further testing on it, but this just proves that we can use snake shed too, and we can color it how we want to with the mica powders or any kind of pigment really, and get it to create the image that we're looking for. That is one of those things where, you know, if you just kind of play around with it, you might be able to come up with some really cool stuff. So Bill, the paint pour, we did epoxy over top of it, but we only put one coat on there to make sure that there wasn't going to be a reaction between the acrylic paint being just acrylic paint and the pouring one, because the median's a little bit different than just, you know, acrylic. And it's just got one coat on it. Other than me having a really bad cut on it, because I just kind of slapped the whole thing on there. I didn't cut off the gooped up edges or anything. I just put the whole thing on there. It will be smooth. I've got a wrap that has it in there. So that's the wrap. When I first, ignore the edges, okay? I still was supposed to go back and like trim those out, and I just haven't done it yet. But the line of the clothes between the spider is the marbling that I did flat on a sheet protector and then peeled it off the sheet protector and cut it to fit into the gaps. And the edges of the outside edges that haven't been trimmed yet are just thrown on there, because my idea was to come back and trim it out so it looked like there was marbling in between, and I had to put the project down. It only has one coat on both of those, so you can see a little bit of ups and downs from it, but as long as you don't do a super thick core and it's not like, you know, massive, it's going to level out just like anything else would. That's taking that marbling concept and incorporating it with thread. And all I did with that one was I didn't trust it to stick to thread, so I just put a little bit of CP on it and then stuck it on there. And I've done this multiple times for trims, just to add a little bit of funk to it. And I just cut it apart with an X-Acto blade and a ruler to the width that I need it and put it in there. And the seams, you can kind of mash them together. I don't know where the seams are on that wrap. I think I have them on the back, if you can find them. Or I may have I just laid it completely across each other, so there's no seam on it.
Yeah, it's just over top of each other.
Yeah, and in hindsight, I would have probably cut that down just to where it pieced together, but if you do cut it to where you have the seams meeting up, you can kind of like mash them together and they'll kind of blend out and you really won't notice it.
There's a little bit of a hot spot there.
Yeah, because I laid it over top of each other.
But you can see on this one,
you can see the seam on that one. If you're really good with it, you cut apart a section that will kind of blend together and you won't even notice it. But most people, unless they're really looking for a seam, they're not gonna see it. That one's pretty noticeable. I don't know how it is on the other side.
It's right there.
It's right there. Yeah, you can barely see it. Like I said, those were just I cut them off real quick and then they ended up kind of getting junky. But it's okay.
Good thing I trimmed my nails and cleaned them.
Right? Your hands look really pretty. Little hand model tonight. So you can also use the snake shed as well with coloring it with mica powder. You can also paint the backs of your snake skin to kind of get a subtle color to pop through. That one actually turned out really cool. I was actually really happy with how that one did. It's not, you know, extremely in your face. It's just real subtle. And I used basically fire colors on that because the koi was orange going into the golden. dragon. So other places that I started to venture down after all that paint pours and the snake shed escapades, graffiti landed in my to-do list. And the graffiti that I started, I saw an image on Pinterest that was of a motorcycle that I've had saved for a few years. Eventually, I knew I was going to either do that color scheme or I was going to try to do graffiti, but this motorcycle was amazing. It's got the hot pinks and lime greens and blacks, and it's just, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I got to do something like that, you know? And I was on Bill Falconer's Mastering Rod Building podcast 2 years ago, and he asked, like, what was I going to plan for the next year? And I said, really, it's just trying out different stuff, things I haven't done yet. I want to keep, like, pushing to see what I can and can't do. And when the graffiti, it came back up on my feed, and I was like, I've got to do that. So I went down the graffiti hole, and I bought a whole bunch of airbrushes. I've got all the airbrushing equipment. I've got like 6 or 7 of them with a compressor, and started playing around with it. And that's some of the tests I started to do, was playing around with the stencils, and that one at the bottom, the pink one. So that was, can I graffiti it? And that was all done with airbrush, minus the here fishy fishy and any little like images that are thrown on there. That's when I went down and bought however many acrylic paint pens I could find. And this was obviously first attempt with the airbrush guns, and no knowledge of how to use the dang things either, but I got that to happen, and I thought, okay, this is doable. We just got to finesse some of the looks, because, you know, this is literally just doodles is what I ended up doing on that one. And then I got a bunch of stencils, and that's where the black and white one came in, and that's a brick stencil. And you can see that this is done with the airbrush again, because you can tell I was having sputtering issues with the paint. But in my design aspect, because it's graffiti, it's kind of acceptable. It would not be if you were trying to go for really clean lines or anything like that. But the black was just black spray paint sprayed on there. And then I came back and started to doodle with the acrylic paint pens again, because I was not in any way, shape, or form going to be able to learn as quickly as I needed my brain to focus on this project how to do the lettering and stuff. But that ended up causing me to go buy 3 or 4 different books on how to do graffiti.
Lots of books.
And I started reading them, and I started doodling. I got a whole sketchbook full of doodles. And as I got through doodling, once I figured out how to do the graffiti inlay for the grips, it started turning into this whole, just everything had to be graffitied and
doodled.
Everything was, I was doodling in the car, I was doodling when I got home, like, I was just doodling with acrylic paint pens. So I just felt like a kid again. I was like, I get to paint, you know. And that came, all of that came from a motorcycle. Straight up from a motorcycle. And I was like, the other thing, adding the texture to the blanks, came from watching a video of a woman distressing an old window. Can't remember her name, but I saw her on Pinterest. It was a little 30-second video, and she's holding up all these stencils and doing all this stuff with these drips and all this other stuff. And I thought, that's what I've got to do for the background for the graffiti rods, because that just makes sense. And so I bought a bunch of stencils and started, and I got, what paint was that? Krylon? I think it was Krylon paint. I got a couple from Hobby Lobby. They were little short cans, and then bought a couple extra ones for the colors I needed to match the grips, and just started adding blocks of color, and it turned into a whole crazy endeavor. And I totally dig the graffiti set. It's actually some of my favorite builds that I've done. I wouldn't need to sell them, but I don't want to let go of them either. I spent way too much time on those, and they're so cool. But they taught me a lot. And that's also the same set that we had to figure out how to do our own clear coat, and that was a whole debacle in itself. Let's just make that face, because there's many times where I had to call him to come help me figure out what I was doing.
Leave the painting to Don.
Yeah, I always will send it to Don. I just knew that Don was going to be so mad at me if I asked him to do what I had in my head. So it was a lesson in that self, but that was the same time that I had just driven. I ran out of the clear coat, had to go drive 45 minutes to go pick it up at the only store that had it local, come back 45 minutes. I'm shaking the can, because it's one of those where you mix it at the same time, And so you have to depress it to put the two together, and then you got to shake it for like a minute and a half or something. And I come shaking it through the garage door, and what do? I knock the whole top of the can off, like the whole sprayer, everything gone. And it's the only can I've got because they didn't have any more. And I have some that I ordered, but they weren't going to be here for another day. And I'm in the middle of this one clear coat on this rod, and it's like, I got to get this finished or it's going to be like bumpy, and then I'm going to have to sand it, and then I'm going to lose all the stenciling. And I was like, ah! And so I ran inside, and I'm like, Wes, help me. And we're outside. He's holding it because we do not have a proper spraying booth in any way, shape, or form set up here. So we had to do everything outside and hope that we didn't get all the summer bugs all over the rod. And Wes is trying to turn it, and I'm holding the nozzle onto the top because it's snapped completely off, and it's not one of those that you can like just put it back on there. No, it's completely damaged. And so as I'm trying to spray it, it's literally just pouring out the bottom like a waterfall. There's still a spot in the yard where no grass will grow because we have completely contaminated that little bit of area, And I mean, I was trying to keep it off of me too, but it's just pouring. I ended up using that whole can on half of the rod because I screwed it up. But 2 days later, I was like, I'll just let that dry. 2 days later, stuff came in from Amazon, and I had ordered, 3 or 4 cans.
Fix all the mess ups.
Yeah. And I still ended up with a little pieces of orange peel in some sections. And if you don't know what orange peel is, it's where you put the clear coat on there and it bubbles up. And it's one of those where you just kind of have to sand it back off and recoat it again. But they turned out pretty dang good for the first time, teaching ourselves how to do clear coats and how to paint the blanks and how to, the whole thing. Like
everything.
And I still tell Don, I'm not doing it anymore unless somebody requests for me to do it, but you're going to clear coat it. I'm not doing the clear coat again. Or I'll send it to, this is another thing, if you don't want to do the clear coat because you're like me and stresses you out, you can try to find a local automotive shop and be like, hey, when you're doing clears, can you spray these blanks down? Because obviously they've got extra, and they're going to charge you something, but they don't usually mind because it's going to take a whoosh, 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 and they're going to be done, and it's going to look amazing. But you just kind of have to talk to your local places and see if they will or not. Worst case scenario, maybe Don will do it for you. I don't want to speak for him though. He might not.
Don will do it.
Are you going to do it for him? I won't tell him you said that. Then I got asked to do a wooden handle, and I had only tried one wooden handle prior to that, and it was for a competition, and I never finished it. It was actually metal inlays, and I wanted to try metal inlay, but I had the wrong metal, I had the wrong tools. I was trying to make my own tools, which they don't sell tools for that metal inlay process. You have to make them. And I was trying to use a razor blade with it, but I put that down. It turned out okay, the first one. The second one was pretty jacked up, and I never actually finished up the project. I was told later on that I should have finished it because it actually looked pretty dang good, but I was expecting a very, very clean look, and I didn't like how it was turning out because I was doing an image that was way too big, and it was wrapping around the wood, and metal doesn't like to bend sideways, and so I was having to cut little triangles in it to get it to, and it wasn't liking it. We ain't got to zoom in. You can't go like you did last time.
Right.
But the next one was for a fly rod, and because all they were really getting on it was just the wood handle, and they wanted the puzzle pieces burned into it, I started to look into the knife makers because they use a lot of those G10 sheets. They use a lot of micarta. They use a lot of different materials that they
vulcanized fiber.
Yep, and the papers. Well, that's what it is, isn't it? The vulcanized fiber. You can use poker chips. You can use all kinds of things to brass pieces, little thin pieces of brass, to put into that stuff. And so I was like, I'm going to try the G10 because it looks cool and you can get it in a lot of different colors. He's making that face for a reason.
Anytime Mary says she tried this, all you should hear is Mary bought more tools.
Mary bought more tools, and a lot of times Mary doesn't always research the entire thing through. G10 cannot be glued to wood without a different glue than what I had. So I had to order 2-part epoxy from West Systems, and I got it glued together. Lord Almighty, that is a mess trying to do wet. I'm used to wood glue. I'm not used to 2-part epoxy. There's the video I put out. I am stressing the whole, because it's just all over the place.
Good again?
Nope. And I got it glued together. and it was amazing. But the part that Mary really didn't think through was not only was it the 2-part epoxy she didn't think through, she also didn't think through about how to turn the dang thing. And you can't use wood turning tools to turn G10 in any way, shape, or form.
Then she learned how much carbide bits are.
Oh, yeah. Carbide bits are very expensive. But the G10 and that wooden handle together with the ebony that we bought,
Yep.
which certain woods are toxic, that one definitely will make you sick if you're not wearing a respirator.
Proper PPE.
That one, Wes cut it. He was just cutting it. And as soon as, I was like, dude, you got to put a thing on because Mark warned me about it. And you take it to the bandsaw thinking just one quick cut to do this ain't going to do anything. Blueberries, strawberries, bananas.
Whew.
Pollen season. But he took it over to the bandsaw to do a real quick cut with it and immediately was like, I don't feel so good. And I'm like, walk outside, go outside, get some air. Because he was immediately kicked with the...
It was bad.
I was like, go outside, stick your face in the fan, do something. Get out of here for a minute. But it ended up turning out really cool. And that all came from knife makers because I went down that whole thing. Which, did you know that it'd be really cool for some of you guys to make a denim handle? You can make handles out of jeans. You've seen it done, right?
Yeah.
How do you make them? How do you make
showed
them?
me.
How do you make them?
You glue them together.
With
I don't remember. That's your department.
resin. You just literally layer these things with resin. It's like putting a leather grip together, which you did that. You just didn't get it finished. And you can do all kinds of stuff, but it's very messy doing, I watched somebody do it with the leather, but it looked really cool. Didn't look how I expected it to look when it got done, but it looked really cool. So knife maker's doing some cool stuff. It's funny you're talking about wood grips. I'm doing the hurricane cleanup and I've got a big piece of burl and I'm going to make some grips out of it. That burl is probably going to turn into something really pretty.
I see it all the time when I'm going to people's houses. And it's so hard for me to not be like, hey, can I cut that off of your tree?
Can I have that?
You see that big knot there? That's like bulging out. Can I cut part of that off?
Burls is where it's at. All kinds of fun stuff in those things. What else? The pin turners also. I got started looking at what they were doing because I was trying to teach myself how to do a chevron in a grip. And a lot of them knife guys. There's that one knife guy where the orange and black and the black and white grips that have the stripes on them that I have done. That came from that guy, and I'll have to put some links to these websites later on because he's got a bunch of tutorials on his where he was doing some cool stuff. But that came from a knife guy too, coming out with the stripes inside the EVA. But the pin turners, there's a lot of them that have a bunch of videos of how to do it. Now, obviously, their sizing is a lot smaller than what we work with, but it's the same cuts. It's the same everything.
Same
You're building it
processes.
in a block. They're building, and so now you just have to take their sizes and you just have to expand it to where it's going to be that 1 5/8 or 2 inches that you're making your block, and now you can follow somebody making a grip because hey, they make blocks and then they turn it down. The scrapper series of the blocks where I was gluing all the extra pieces because I had all those extra, I have got so many totes of just pieces I've cut off blocks, and I started building those crazy grips that ended up not being glued together properly because I did it completely wrong. But I did get some basically circle cork ring kind of size out of them, a little bit smaller than what your standard cork ring would be,
Right.
that you could use for trim later on. But they ended up being this crazy looking Art Deco from all the different colors and stuff. That idea to use those scraps came from a pin turner because they're obviously cutting off wood pieces too. He saved all his and then he started building his little blocks, and I started gluing them together and followed what he did, and then I was like, oh, well, this kind of worked out kind of cool. When I go to do it again, I'm going to build it flat, layer by layer, instead of just, I was trying to build a 3D city. Like, it was stupid how I did it, but I learned something.
Building Legos over here.
I was building a Lego city out of blocks. It was bad. And because I had little pieces where, some of the glue didn't get, because it didn't get all the way in, and then I found a hole, so I just started trying to shove EVA in there to fix the hole, and then the holes would just not get fixed, and there'd be little air pockets. And so for all of that work, I ended up with 30 or 40 pieces of little trims that I can put in someplace, and they look really cool because you got a black and white side on one other and a hot pink, and I mean they're all crazy, but it'd been cooler if they had been actual grips. But anyways, the pin turners, Another guy that I saw on YouTube, he did, okay, so you know how we always do checkerboard? And this is where I got stuck with the plaid. I got stuck on this because I saw this guy do it with checkerboard. We always do checkerboard as the cylinders. We glue them together with the little wedges and, and that's how we do our checkerboards. Well, this guy made a block out of black and, I think it was gray and white, but he did an entire block. This is where I ended up coming up with how he's doing the cookies and cutting all this and rotating and doing this, and that. And when he turned it down, it still was checkerboard. It was not ugly pieces opening up into unugly pieces. It was completely checkerboard. And I was like, that's why I got stuck on those plaid grips going, there's got to be a way to turn it down. I've watched this dude do it. But that one ended up having to be, it's better to do it as a checkerboard our way than it is to try to do it as a block. Maybe if it was just 2 colors, it might work. I don't know. But there's one guy that shows you how to do the little scallops where you can do, you can find all kinds of chaos for the grips. And then cork stuff, pulling from wood burning, just watching the people that do that as a full-time thing, watching how they shade, how they do all this other stuff, watching everybody do it flat and then you trying to adapt it to round. Somebody on my business page made this comment the other day because I've been posting about the marbling because I've got to teach it next weekend, and it's coming weekend. It's next weekend.
I'm just making that face about you teaching marbling.
I know. Advanced marbling coming from Mary. So I've been trying to come up with some advanced techniques that I hadn't seen done, and I was watching a lot of nail art because in my Pinterest, y'all would lose your mind at my Pinterest feed. Because it's all kinds of crafts and then sarcastic sayings and then crafts and then like t-shirts and then crafts and then like
it
tumblers.
is total chaos.
It is. Wes looked through it one night and he's like, this makes no sense. I was like, it does for me. Choo choo.
It is a look inside any woman's mind with 50 tabs open, music playing somewhere that they don't know where it's coming from.
Yep.
People screaming in the background, a concert going on, saws running over here. Chaos.
Can't help it. It's what it is. But nail art, they do some cool stuff. And I always think if you can do it on a fingernail, you obviously can do it on a rod because it's small stuff. The techniques are there. And that's kind of where all that stuff. I'd already been watching these nail artists with being able to put the rhinestones on the rods, being able to put the little the stickers on the rods, doing some of the stamps that I had. I never kept any of the stamps.
And now she's found the magnetic versions.
What are you talking about?
The ones where they put the magnet and it like changes directions.
Oh, the cat's eye. They call it the cat's eye. It's got you can use magnets to change the direction of the glitter that's in it, basically. And so you can make little heart shapes and you can do little zigzags, or you can just shift it to one thing so that as they turn their fingernail, all you see is where you've shifted most of the color into it. It's pretty awesome, actually. But the marbling stuff has been mainly from nail art. And one guy was like, he's trying to be rude about it, but he was like, don't you build fishing rods and not actually do nail art? And I responded with, I don't see a problem with pulling inspiration from another person to incorporate it into what we do.
Whereas I'd have said, how do you know that came from nail art?
Right? You knew it was from nail art, so you've seen it done. But there is no problem with pulling from another craft or a hobby or from something else and trying to adapt it to what we're doing. The problem is trying to figure out how to adapt it to what we're doing. Because working on a fingernail and you never have to worry about it rotating, obviously, yeah, you can do some cool stuff because they can immediately stick it under the light and set it. We can't do that. So we have to figure out how we can apply it to something that's either continuously turning, which that also led me into the tumbler vibe. Some of the people baking tumblers do some cool stuff too. And you can sit there and watch these videos on TikTok or YouTube or, Facebook. You just got to find them and you can see some cool stuff doing. A lot of the people doing the tumblers are doing like those graphics in the papers and they're, doing a bunch of glitter and stuff like that. But there are some people that are actually physically painting stuff onto the tumblers and like doing fun drags and stuff. One that I remember, I've been watching her stuff, trying to take what she's doing and change it a little bit and put it towards like the rods. Was her name is Jen. It's $4 Design, and she's on TikTok. I see her on TikTok. I'm sure she's elsewhere too, but she does some cool stuff. And I was like, man, I wish I could figure out how to do what she's doing for the marbling, because then we would have more control over it. But she uses a fast set epoxy. We can't use the fast setting epoxy because even though the epoxy that she's using has a bunch of UV inhibitors in it, it still turns amber really fast because it's a fast set. So I don't want to chance marbling getting ugly for the sake of trying to create the art. So it's like, all right, I've got to figure out how to adapt this to what we're doing and maybe simplify it some way, or maybe instead of doing it, this way, we have to work with the rotation to keep it from dripping. It's just been a whole thing. It's been a whole thing. Thank you. I've been doing some fun stuff. I will say, I've been doing a lot of ugly stuff too. I got like 3 or 4 pieces over there that have all the demonstration stuff on there. But my goal is, I'm not coming in there to be, I'm an advanced marbler. That sounds weird. Sounds like a bird. Warbler. I'm not coming in there to say I know everything about it, but I'm coming in to tell you, okay, this is what I tried, this is what I've done, this is how I've done it, this is the technique I used with it. Here's some examples of the things that did work. I'm not going to show you everything about, and I'm going to tell you what didn't work on the other ones, but I'm also working with a thickening agent that's not for rod building specifically. It's called Nice and Thick is what it's called, and it's for tumbler craft, but it's just a resin thickener. I'm waiting on mud to get here from Voodoo because I want to play with that too, because I've heard such great stuff about it. But that's not here till Monday or Tuesday. So I have very little time to play with that to see how it does for me.
And set up stuff for your grip class.
Yep, I'm going to get the grip class put together.
And get these 6 rods done.
Trying to finish these 6 rods, and I'll have to edit this podcast and get it out before we leave. Woo woo, busy times. But basically, when I go into something, I go and I see somebody doing something cool, I completely keep an open mind. And inspiration could come from their hobby or their craft, or it can come from pictures that I see. A lot of my color palettes I pull from either nature, or somebody else has put their color palettes on Pinterest or the internet, and I pull inspiration from that to try to imitate it, the colors in my wraps. When I was playing around with the color shift, it's called Prism something. It's one of the glitters somebody sent me over the years, and it has a raven color to it. It says that black to green purple shift, and I was struggling when I was going to marble with that. Like, my brain couldn't figure out. I'm thinking greens and purples, and and I had to get on Pinterest to find a color palette that looked like a raven that would work with it, that would have some kind of high and some kind of low other than just white, but I ended up putting white on it anyways, and it actually worked out. But adding the glitters and all that stuff to it, changes how it behaves for sure. I just watch videos. If somebody's doing something cool, or I get an idea in my head, how can I do graffiti? Then I go find what people are doing for graffiti. I can't tell you how many videos I watched of people graffitiing walls, or just doing the doodles in their sketch pads of how they were doing it, and learning how you're supposed to make a tag for you as an artist, or what you're supposed to do. How there's like 20 different styles of graffiti, and they all have certain things that you have to do in order for it to fall into that category. And obviously I'm a newbie. I can't remember what they call us, but I'm like, I'm not a professional at it. I just need to do it to get through the project so I can figure it out. But books and books and books. Another person that there's a couple people that I always look to for inspiration because I see what they can do and they think outside the box regularly. One of them is Nuno. Sean, you do bring up a valid point. The fast set epoxy does not flex very well in cracks. They can use it on the tumblers because they're not trying to, catch a fish with it. They're just drinking out of it. So you have to figure out what you're wanting to get out of it without sacrificing the actual build, because we can't put a hard set epoxy on there and expect it to flex without causing damage. I like to look at Nuno's stuff and look at what he thinks about outside the box. Being in Portugal, he has to come up with different ways to create things that he can't get. Now, he is also an artist. He creates these cool looking fish out of scrap pieces that he finds, and he's got a jewelry place, and so he just does some really cool stuff. If you guys don't have this book, Creative Rod Crafting by Nuno Paulino, it gives you some really cool ideas. This in particular, I think these are called ponchos. You can find them a lot in craft stores sometimes, but leather places have these, a lot of these, and he uses them in a lot of his builds. He's one of the first people, I think actually the first person that I saw use fake or other leather skins.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to.
He's got the stingray, and then to hide the seam, he's taken that another piece of the stingray and put it a edge of a chain.
And gone vertical.
And, laid it over top of that. And then he's got a piece of, it looks like part of a rail seat. I don't know exactly what it is, but that's clamped down over top of it as well. And, in the book, he does some explanations of, like, techniques that he uses, things that he does. And all of it's just thinking outside the box, trying to use regular materials.
His marbling.
His marbling's in there, too. He's got a bunch of pigments that he has as well. He's got some YouTube videos on his marbling techniques. And he does a lot of really just different stuff. He's got a really cool style.
Blank painting.
A lot of painting the blanks.
Snake skins.
Taking you can also take with the snake skins individual scales, and you can lay them down as trim going around your guides or your wraps, which he's got a little section on that too. I would never thought to pull the scales off individually. I can tell you from me pulling scales off to work with the snake skin, it's aggravating. So for him to get all those really perfect ones, I know that he probably had to get like 50 off so he could pull out the really pretty ones. Another person, obviously we love this man 110% because he actually is what excelled us into the builders we are today, is Mark Stephen Krause. And our book is falling apart. But this book, he is going through and explaining how he did his totem pole build. And really cool book. The entire book is literally just about the process of him doing it. It's
step by step of him building it.
Yeah, so you could literally just do it yourself. But this is a really cool book to to get and to learn the very meticulous ways that Mark does his stuff, because it is very cool. We actually have the book. I am selling the book. I've just got to verify with Mark how much he was selling the book for, because he sent it to me last year. And I don't remember how much he was selling the book for, honestly.
$100.
No, it's not that much. So if you're interested in getting one of those, just let me know. Plan was to get it onto the website with Threads and Stroll, and I just got behind with getting that stuff done. But I do have copies of the book. I just need to verify from him how much he was selling them for, because I don't want to...
probably bring them to Orange Beach.
Yeah, we can bring some of them with us if I remember to pack them. We won't be bringing the whole shop like we did to the expo, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. But
if it don't fit in the Suburban, it's not going to work.
That is 100% true, and we got to make room for all the foam. Which, speaking of, we have new colors. We had hot pink last time that we talked to you, but this is the one I've been waiting on. Turquoise. I cannot wait to get back and get all these rods knocked out so I can play with this color, because I have been waiting on this color. It's felt like an eternity. But they are now up on the site, and new EVA inlay sheets are out there as well. There's 3 different colors of those. Hot pink, gray, and mint is also added to the collection. So basically, pull inspiration for wherever you want to and just challenge yourself. I mean, watch the guys making guitars when they do the mother of pearl inlays in your wood, inlays in like the wood handles especially. You could, if you wanted to make a hosel out of wood for your ramp instead of, using thread or something like that, you could, maybe put some mother of pearl on that. Taking the abalone and using it. Like, there's so much that we can draw inspiration to kind of make ourselves unique, and also each build unique as well. It's time to talk about our product of the night. And tonight's product of the night is... Dun, dun, dun.
I'm kind of excited about this one. So it is a variable speed rod dryer. Goes from 15 to 45 RPMs, depending on how fast you need to set it. You set it and let it go. I actually didn't know they had this out until tonight. So I'm kind of excited.
Well, one thing that I like about it is you got the variable speed. That's a new, complete, updated version. Then you've got the upgraded chuck on top of that. Those squeeze chucks, they can take multiple size lengths. And you don't have to worry about your rod slipping out of the chuck with that, because if it has a butt on it. I always wait to put the butts last, because I got so sick and tired of them falling out of the dryers, because they just would work themselves out, and that you don't have to worry about it. I could put 3/4 inch PVC in there. I could put a little bass rod in it. I can put a fly rod in it. I can put the extenders in it, and it's good to go. That particular one comes with one stand with it. The only thing is just when you go to put it into it, because we have one of those on the CPW. You just have to make sure that you get it centered, and it's good to go.
Centered and level.
Centered and level, yeah. If you got it where it's like up a little bit or it's down, it's gonna start to like try to do some stupid stuff, and it can work its way out if you've got too much high. I don't ever put the security stands on top when I'm drying them. They're always either loose or just, I don't ever put pressure on them, because every time that I've put pressure on them, they've always like worked themselves out.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm notorious for putting them in there not level. So Wes is always like, anyways, if you have problems with it drying, get another stand. That usually is the biggest thing, is just make sure you got support on it. But I really like the dryers because if you don't have a power wrapper, now this is a way for you to be able to probably get level epoxy with it. Because you could get it up to 45 RPMs, and it's not going to be stupid fast, but it's going to be faster than you trying to do it on the 15 or hand turning it. So maybe you might even be able to adapt it to where you could use marbling for it, as doing a couple different things. So that's why I was like really excited to see that, because I didn't know they had it, and now it's the new Generation 2 dryer. So definitely like that one over the normal. What are those? What is the other ones
little
they have?
3-jaw.
No, not the ones that has the rubber over it where you have to like shove it into the thing.
Oh.
Leon says, I have one. It has walked down a tapered butt grip. Huh.
I could see that.
I could see where it might want to walk down it, but I've not had a problem out of the ones we've had. But then again, we don't ever have butts on ours when we put them in there either. We've never, I always just wait till the butts
always
off.
do the butts last. That's the last thing before we ship them out.
Yeah, it's the very last thing. As soon as it's done with epoxy, the butt gets glued on, it gets ready to set. The next day it's shipping. Usually. Maybe a day later. But it's usually that is the last thing that I got so tired of them walking out. And since I stopped putting the butts or the gimbals or whatever was going on in the rear, never had a problem with it walking out of any of the dryers. And we're going to thank our sponsors. Because without Foundation Outdoor Group and also Mudhole being one and the same, we would not be able to give away all these cool prizes. We would not be able to do all this traveling and teaching. And we would not be able to give back to the community as much as we are. On that note, remember, if you do decide that you want to buy anything from Mudhole, whether it's CRB, Pro Products, American
MHX.
Tackle, MHX, the rod dryer that we just spoke about, you can get, and Gaho Reel Seats, you can also get 10% off using Decorative 10, which is the discount code for the podcast. So you can use that at any point in time. The only thing that you can't do with it is stack it on top of another discount that's happening at the same time. But for you to be able to go in there and order your thread or get one of those dryers and try it out, or anything else in those categories, saves you some money. So you should do that.
It works on wrappers.
It works on the wrappers too. So the G2, like the Pro stands, the whole shebang, it takes 10% off too. But Mudhole's cool to work with, and if you got any problems with or questions about, how to put certain things together, or hey, can you measure something for me? They're really cool about being able to help you with that stuff. But that's the best thing about it, is their customer service can go run into their inventory and check to make sure that piece is going to fit before it gets shipped out. You just have to really have conversations with them, and if there's any issues with the shipping, which I've been seeing a whole bunch of shipping dramas being posted.
Y'all don't even know how fast those orders get put out.
It's
not them.
It's not them. They're literally sitting there at the back door waiting for the trucks to arrive to come pick them up. And then once they get on the trucks and they leave the warehouse, they're no longer in control of it. And I have heard that the Vito shipping center with USPS is specifically really bad and delayed. But as far as, for us, we've never had any problems with it. It's always been
after it gets out of the facility.
Yeah. And it's not anything of their doing in any way, shape, or form.
Well, that day we walked around in the warehouse.
They had
I literally, the 15-20 minute tour that we took of it, there were 50 orders that were processed in 15-20 minutes.
Yeah. And then you watch the trucks roll in.
Gone.
And they're like, whoosh, and they're in, they're out, and they're going. And we saw that just that time, and we had asked, how many times did they pick up? And it's twice a day for each carrier or something. But, if you've got a problem with shipping, the basic thing, just call them. You know, I mean, yeah, you can get frustrated with it and people want to complain, but it doesn't help you to go to the live page and complain about the shipping. Just speak to one of them, because they will literally tell you where it's at, where it got picked up, when it's supposed to get to you. They know all of that stuff because they just send it out to you, you know. So just take it with a grain of salt that there's other like 500 orders getting processed, you know.
Or pay for the upgraded shipping and use a different carrier.
The upgraded shipping will definitely save you the hassle if it continues
to
happen.
The UPS FedEx shipping is way better.
We don't have a problem with the USPS here, but that's just for us. That doesn't mean that applies to everybody else. I hate when everybody's like, well, I get it in 3 days and it's fine. Well, yes, but not everybody lives where you live.
Sometimes ours is 3, sometimes ours is 7.
You know, usually it's 3, but it also depends on when it gets ordered. Like if I send in the order on Monday and it's usually out by Wednesday, I might not see it till Monday the next week. Or if it goes in Tuesday, I might get it by Friday. It really just depends on, you know, when it gets processed. But I have to remember that, you know, I am one little person out of however many's in the lineup of that stuff getting done. But anyways, I don't want to go to a rant about shipping. But Mudhole is a great company to just ask questions and learn from. Their live videos, great information being shared. Their journal that they are writing, Chris Adams. I actually have to come out with like a big, massive applause to Chris Adams over does the decorative wrap actually add that much weight? He had a whole write-up with science behind it, the weights, everything. Because everybody's biggest thing is always, oh, wraps add too much weight, right? And he's got the actual proof in that little blog post journal, whatever you want to call it. It only added like, what was it, 1/8 of an ounce or something? And I may be misquoting that. Like, it was really small. It was really insignificant. And it was like, basically the answer to this is no, they don't add that much weight. I told him, I said, I really love this. Like, this is amazing for you to actually go through. And he weighed the epoxy, the 3 coats that he did. So he knew exactly how much weight was being added from the wrap to all 3 coats of the epoxy. And it was like, wow. It really is not adding that much weight at all. And if you could tell those like ounce or whatever it added, go check out the journal, because like
it was 1/8 of an ounce.
It was 1/8 of an ounce.
Yeah.
And like, if you can feel that, there's some better jobs out there for you than rod building. I didn't pay attention to those journals until I saw that one pop up. And then I started going back and started looking at the other ones, and I thought, dang, this is a wealth of knowledge. So you're not only getting information from the live videos, you're also getting information through their journal posts and general posts. If you take their classes, whether they're online or in person, I think they're doing the thing. I really do, and I'm really happy that we get along with them. Anyways, it is now time for the giveaway. What everybody's been waiting on. Boop. Tonight we're giving away the starter kit for the CRB marbling kit, and I wanted to give this away because I wanted you guys to also do your own testing for marbling. It's been fun. The only thing I'm going to say is the powders are great. I like them a lot. I have these little itty bitty little shovel scoop things that came with another set of pigments or whatever, and I use a big full scoop of that mixed in with it. All of those are metallic pigments, and they do not thicken up the epoxy on their own, so you will have to add a thickener to it. As I said, I've been using that nice and thick stuff. Literally, you can Google nice and thick. However, I encourage you to wait until I try out the Voodoo Mud. I need to use it because I've been hearing such good stuff about it. So I do want to do a comparison between what I have been using versus that. But you will need a thickening agent to keep it from bleeding. If you're trying to, have a stagnant, what I keep saying, like something that's a still and it doesn't bloom out on you and expand or get muddled. I've been having a lot of people telling me, oh, they've been muddling. It's been turning all these different colors and everything. It's because you haven't added a thickener to it. If you use the acrylic paints like we have been using, those you don't add a thickener to because they immediately gum up on you. They will turn into paste real fast with just a little bit of tint in it. But I did enjoy how the powder pigments did versus the liquid pigments. But I got a feeling that I didn't add enough thickener to the liquid stuff either because I only had this little itty bitty sample size before my big one came in. But I want you to test it out because it's really fun. But what's our question for them to be able to win this?
How many presenters are going to be at Mastering Rod Building Seminar in Orange Beach, Alabama next weekend?
how much powder do you mix to epoxy? So with that nice and thick stuff, I was using a heaping, I would say probably, if we were doing a measuring spoon, if you will, probably a teaspoon of it, like a rounded teaspoon, because it is a powder. And it seems that the stuff that I was testing, you have to use a little bit more to get it to gum up like you kind of want it to. 9, Big Brown Dog Custom Rods, LLC one. He got it before Sean did. Congratulations! Woo! Big Brown Custom Rods. Contact me. I need your information so that we can get that shipped out to you. I'll contact Mudhole on Monday and get them to drop ship it for you. But it comes with those stir sticks that it sends with it. They literally look like popsicle sticks, or not popsicle sticks, sucker sticks. And I actually really like those. I'm using coffee stir sticks, bamboo ones that have like, they look like little mini oars kind of, but they actually mix it up really good. But those white ones are good too. Just remember, with that kit, you need to have, if you don't want your colors to, what I call it blooming, where they just kind of continue to keep expanding, you have to have a thickener. So you can either Google epoxy thickeners, additives of that nature, or you can order some mud from Voodoo, and that's supposed to be really good as well. The WS. Oh, you're on as a different name tonight, Thomas. Okay, cool. I got you then. Then I already don't need your info. I already know who you are. Sweet. You got a set of grips. Now you get a marbling kit. Now you get a marble rod.
With the set of grips.
Actually, it does have a maroon color in that kit. No, I'm sorry, it doesn't. That's in the liquid pigment. That one has. Yeah. That one does not have any colors except for a silver that would match yours. So no, you can't do that. But do it on your next one, or get some PVC and practice it. Now it is Q&A time. Da, 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 da. You guys have any questions, comments, concerns about anything that I mentioned tonight, or places where you got an idea and maybe I can help you kind of figure out where to look for the info? Do you have a video on how to end a decorative wrap?
Yes.
I do. I'm trying to think.
I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube.
Like to tie it off or the close? Which version of that?
Pretty sure it's on the YouTube.
Well, I've got a little mini course on how to tie it off on Thread Central, where I go through the steps of how to get a clean one. But there's a bunch of mini video. I mean, there's always like a quick little showing in the videos of like how I'm doing stuff.
They're talking about tying off, having lost two.
Oh, that sucks. I hate that feeling. So my steps before I start, like when I first started wraps, I was losing them because when I go to tie them off, I wasn't getting enough of a start to the tie off, and I wasn't getting a correct tension on it. You good?
I gotta blame this.
Okay. And what was happening is they would start to jump, or I just lose them because they get too loose. So what I started doing was I would put CP on the wrap because I use a lot of Madeira, so I obviously need it. And I have learned that it really doesn't matter if you put CP on NCP treated thread or no, CP thread. It doesn't really do anything to it. The only thing I will warn about putting CP on like some blacks will kind of have like a gray tinge to it. You just have to be careful. The only one I know off the top of my head I would refuse to put CP on is black from Pac Bay. I can't stand that color. It turns a grayish kind of color. It's really nasty. Voodoo Black does great with CP on it, and also so does Pro Wrap Black. I have not had any issues at either one of those. And I don't have a black from Fuji, so I don't know how that does or not. But Fuji's got great threads as well. Anyways, I'd put a coat of CP on it in the area that I was keeping, not where I was starting my tie-offs, because I need to have those loose. I don't want them cemented to the blank. I'd let that dry, and then I would start my band, and then start to cut the tape anchor off. One that's going to glue your wrap to your blank, so you don't have to worry about it jumping. But the other thing is start off your little tie-off and crank down the tension a little bit so it's really tight. And as you get through it, you can release the tension a little bit so you know that edge is going to work. And the biggest thing is to have non-lumpy tie-offs, is to cut those threads at a angle. Cut them at a feathered angle, and then once you get them all released and they're all short and they're all different lengths, they'll lay down really smooth, and you won't have the knots of where you were trying to finish the wrap. The other tidbit: take some tape, go back over all of the fuzzies so you get all that out of there so it doesn't come poking up through your tie-off. But if you need a visual of it, I do have tying off a wrap on Thread Central underneath Mary's courses. And you can literally just watch me in real time of how I'm doing it. But that's the explanation behind it. How many layers, coats of epoxy do you put between your tiger wrap layers? Duncan, I don't know. That's the one thing I have not done.
Typically, it's anywhere from 2 to 5, depending on the amount of definition and separation you want between the layers.
Duncan, what I would tell you to do is go find Doc Ski's videos and check out what he's been doing with the tiger wraps. He's got really educational videos, and his videos are very in-depth information, and his tiger wraps are
phenomenal.
Amazing. They're gorgeous. So find somebody named Doc, D-O-C, Ski, S-K-I, on YouTube, and you will be amazed at the information he has. Tiger wraps are one of the only things that I haven't put my hands on to yet. It is on the books this year, although the year is starting to really whoosh really quickly. Hey, Bill, welcome. He called you Officer Wes.
Don't forget it.
I swear, you need to have a pair of aviators on. It would look more convincing.
They don't make them big enough for my fat-ass face. And they're like this big. They stop here. I look like fat guy in little sunglasses.
Oh my God. I'm going to pull the mic off.
They don't make them big enough for me. That's why I don't wear those Ray-Bans I have. Because they're like this.
Babe.
Being honest, they're not big enough.
You got to get the ones you used to have. Although
That
they're
scratched up all to hell. And
they're like $300 glasses.
I've never bought $300 aviators.
Yeah, we had a matching set.
No, we didn't.
What were the aviators you wore then?
That were some cheap gas station.
Well, then you need to find some of them because they look good on your face. They weren't that good with glasses. What the hell is that? Don't say that. You just got a big head for all that knowledge you got in there and sarcasm.
I'm just waiting on Oakley to come out with the safety lenses for the glasses I want.
Carlos is saying, when applying CP on an open wrap, how do you keep microbubbles from forming in the empty spaces? Occasionally get some and have to dab the spots with a small alcohol-soaked wipe and hit it with heat.
What CP are you using?
How are you applying it? How are you mixing it before you put it on there?
That's a good question, too. Are you shaking it or stirring it?
See, I always take my CP and I always stir it with the back of my paintbrush, and I use those plastic throwaway ones. Pull all the excess off of it, clean the brush because I got to hold it, and then apply it on speed. And even with the open wraps, I wasn't getting bubbles. I make that face and sound because of that name. It keeps popping up with dramas here lately for me, but it shouldn't be creating bubbles unless it's very, very thin.
Are you shaking it?
You can't introduce bubbles before you do it, but even if you're not shaking it to mix it, don't ever shake CP. I don't care what brand it is. I don't care what it says. Don't shake it. You got to stir that stuff. Probably one of the reasons why you may be getting bubbles as you apply it under power is because you're going from high to low, so the brush is obviously changing. I shake the bottle and got bubbles. Yeah. Yeah. You got to stir it. This is one of those situations where it's stirred, not shaken.
Yeah, don't shake CP. Please.
Don't shake it. Don't shake it. But if you're getting bubbles popping up, it's probably because of how fast you're applying it, so maybe slow down a little bit. However, I'm testing out a new one, and it's a little bit thinner than what I'm used to work to, and I do see the bubbles pop up, and I just take my paintbrush and I just pop them, and then they don't come back. But if they're popping up after it's already been drying a little bit, like for you to have to take alcohol to get rid of it, and that means that it's soaking in and the air is getting pulled out, which I don't know if you guys know that it's that's part of CP's job. That's how it keeps the color retained, is it pulls the oxygen out from underneath so that nothing can get through. And that's the reason why a lot of people use CP on metallics, because metallics are notorious for trapping oxygen. Bubbles aren't terrible, but I have to watch it for at least 5 minutes before walking away. Carlos, I got to do that with that other one I'm testing too. Just kind of keep an eyeball on it. What it means is it's thin, and I'm stirring mine, I'm applying it on speed, and I'm seeing a couple bubbles pop up because what's happening is it's penetrating, and I just take the brush and I just pop them, and then just make sure it doesn't come back, and I just watch it for a few minutes. I didn't used to have to do that with other ones, but they were thicker, So the thinner they are, the faster they're penetrating, the more they're pulling that oxygen out. So you're not, in this situation, you're not doing anything wrong. It's just, it's a very thin CP, and it's just going whoosh, pulling the oxygen out, and you got a little bubble there. Just don't ever walk away and leave said bubble, because then you're going to have a ugly little bloop when it comes to putting this stuff on there. I wish I knew. Started working with Madeira on this last build. Actually roll the CP bottle, roll it between my hands for use. You will not get bubbles. I learned that from drawing insulin from vials. Hey, that's a good idea too. 1 or 2 coats of CP. I always do 3 coats of CP.
1 or 2? 3.
3. I do 1 coat, let it dry. So that could be, it depends on the CP. It could be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. Come back, do the 2nd coat, repeat, let it dry. The 3rd coat, this is where it's most important. Once you put the 3rd coat on there, let it dry minimum 6 hours before you put epoxy on it. I don't know how many of you have tried this, but you try to come back, you're like, oh, it's dry, cool. And you go to put epoxy on, and then all of a sudden you get this milky kind of color bleeding through. It's because your CP wasn't completely fully dry. The outside of it might have felt like it was, but the inside actually wasn't. So if you give it overnight is a really good rule, but if you give it at least 6 to 8 hours, you should be good. About to do a chevron over metallic, use CP before the wrap. I hate packing thread over thread. I would personally put a coat of epoxy in between the layers so it's a little bit easier to pack it, and you don't have to worry about top layer trying to dig into bottom layer.
And let that epoxy set up for a few days.
For a few days. So it's, you know, yeah, it'll be dry the next day, but if you can take your thumbnail and dent it, it's not dry enough, because if you go to pack, then you're going to end up stabbing and it's going to get gummy, and then you've got it's not going to work great. You won't see the indents or anything like that when you put the 2nd coat on, but it's you're not going to be able to pack it really nicely either. So I'd give it a couple days to dry before I'd go to put the top layer on. That's me personally. If you don't want to wait, you don't want to put the coat in between, I would bump up my thread on my chevron to a bigger size. So if you did your metallic with A, come back with a B or a C for your overwrap, your chevron, and then it won't try to dig into the layer underneath of it.
Been able to salvage any of your old live videos?
Bill, I'm still trying to pull them. I was looking for higher quality content, so, but I'm still trying to. I gotta till the end of this month before they disappear. So
we're trying to pull them though.
Trying to get them. It's this problem. Problem is I've got so many videos in queue. I've got to get them out of my. I got to get them out of my memory before I can download any more. So I'm having to dump onto the external hard drives to try to do all this stuff.
One, we are testing CPs currently. We'll get back to you.
My personal CP favorite, they don't make anymore, Chromasil by Rod Dancer.
It was the best.
It was the best. It never failed me. It did exactly what it was supposed to every single time. Now, making it slightly darker is normal. All right, that's normal.
But going orange to maroon is not.
Yeah, it shouldn't make it really dark. It shouldn't drop 2 shades. It might drop a shade. That's pretty normal. I mean, that's the same thing with epoxy. You put epoxy on, it's going to make it just a wee bit darker too. But we've got some stuff in testing, and I've got to do some other tests with it to make sure that it's going to be good. And if it works out how I am seeing it to work out, it will be the new go-to. So, fingers crossed. CP first, then epoxy. For what situation?
Same one they were talking about, chevron over metallic.
The chevron or the metallic. See, I don't ever put CP on. Well, I'm not a metallic person. I don't like metallic because it gives me so many damn problems. But if it was me and I was trying to eliminate the bubbles, because I remember that one rod that they had to have metallic on, we had to babysit the hell out of the epoxy going over it because all those micro bubbles were popping up. Yep. I would put
Literally
at least,
had to check it every 15-30 minutes.
I would put CP on it and then put epoxy and then do my overwrap, so I don't have to worry about these micro bubbles popping up, because
it might help seal in the metallic and keep it from fading too.
No, it's tinsel. It can't do that. It can't soak into it. What it's soaking into is the rayon center. It can't make the tinsel stay. All it's going to do is pull the oxygen out of it. Obviously, there's better brands of metallic out there than others, and some of them fade faster than others, and it also depends on how often the rod is in the sun. But
just hang it on the wall. You won't have that problem.
The Vivid from Gen 4 has done well for me so far.
Cool.
Good. A lot of times, it's just what works for you, honestly.
But ain't nothing yet beating Chromasil.
I was so mad. And the reason why they don't have it anymore is because California has banned one of the chemical components that's in it. And so we can't have it anymore.
That's what we were told. I don't know if I believe it.
Do you use Madeira thread only for closed wraps or guide wraps also? Great question. I use the Madeira thread for my wraps, and I will, on the occasion, use it for trims on my guide wraps if I don't have a matching NCP color or no CP color. But I don't use it for my actual guide wraps because if I don't want to go through the hassle of putting CP on the guides and, you know, I want to just do straight epoxy to it, it's a nightmare because it is covered in silicone because Madeira is an embroidery thread. It's coated in the silicone to keep it from getting caught up and knotted in those sergers as it runs through at high speed. And the silicone wreaks havoc on our epoxy. We did it one time for that fly rod. And
it was a hassle.
Those guide wraps took 2 weeks to get them covered because it kept repelling the whole time.
Yep.
It just was
and it was
fisheye.
completely different because that white rod over there, I did the same thing I did for that fly rod. The white rod I had 0 issues with. That rod we had nothing but problems with.
It must be me then.
I think it's because on that rod we used what epoxy did we use on it?
That was our favorite one. They banned. They got rid of.
Classic.
Classic coat. We had classic coat.
That one's got flex coat.
That might be why. It could be the difference between the two. They're all a little bit different, you know. But yeah, that was classic coat on that because we burned through some classic coat because we loved it, and then they took it away, and then we found Rod Dancers, and that was great. We loved that. And
Threadmaster.
The Threadmaster, and then it disappeared, and it was like, oh my gosh, why are y'all doing this to us?
I'm enjoying Pro Coat, especially that one we're testing.
Yeah, and I don't like the high build, but that's just me personally. I like the regular stuff, but it's been doing really well. Do you mix size of threads in your wraps? Sometimes, not often. Like
A in Madeira.
Yeah, like A and Madeira, and on occasion, you guys, if you buy enough thread, you know that sometimes your size A in one brand is a lot smaller than the next time you buy it, and it's the same brand, same size, and it might be just a wee bit bigger.
You could do size C Fuji and Madeira.
Right? Fuji's new line of thread is tiny. Their size C or D, it looks like a B.
C.
It's ridiculous. It's insane. Like, it's very, very skinny. So I'm not speaking for the new Fuji thread, but for the most part, I try to stick to A or Madeira. You know, I don't really like to mix bigger threads with smallers because then it likes to roll over on itself, and there's also the height difference whenever you're doing the epoxy. So if something's just slightly bigger, that's one thing, but I don't really go from A to C.
Carlos, unless you want to spend $3,200 or more on the Ultimate Reamers from Batson, get the 1X, 2X, 3X, and I think there might be a 4X from Mudhole.
But if they don't have one that's as big as what you need, you'll have to find either a blank or a PVC or, a dowel or something. It's not going to be tapered, but you're going to have to find something that is the size that you need to get it to and make your own. And you can use contact cement with strips of sanding paper and spiral it to get it to work. Obviously, if you're trying to get something that's a lot bigger than that 3X or 4X that they have.
If you're building something that big, then you definitely have to make your own. But that one, hold on.
That 4X is pretty big.
It goes pretty large.
I can't remember if they have one.
It's pretty large. Hold on.
Because I know I've had to make my own before, and they had to go on a straight taper, and you just have to, put a tiny little arbor in the section where it was. But
it goes up to 3XL.
Yeah.
And the 3XL covers 0.735 inches to 0.9 inches. And I'm 100% sure that if you crank that 0.9 inch maximum in a drill as fast as you can go, it'll probably make it 1 inch.
Well, you can, I hate to say this because it's not very OSHA, but you can also kind of like squeeze down on the material. Just be really careful that you don't just squeeze down on one side and oblong that thing, but you can kind of wallering it. You waller it out. But you kind of squeeze down a little bit, and you can kind of get it to be a little bit bigger, but be careful doing that because you can get your hand caught or the grip can get caught on it real quick. And
There's been
take
several
it out
times
some
though where like we have one that's almost close enough, and then I'll just grab it and
Just waller it out.
squeeze and let go, squeeze and let go, squeeze and let go, so it's like randomly catching it, and it'll make it a little larger at the end.
Just make sure that you're not squeezing and catching it on the same side every time, because if it gets oblong or an oval shape, you can't fix that.
Yep. We have two, Bill.
Yes, the bats and reamers have a point.
Matter of fact, we just threw them away.
Yeah,
couple weeks
but
ago.
the big reamers that I kept from those like 1.5 inch blanks, like they're still over there just in case I need them. Because I had the same problem with that gaff, but when that thing was monster, and I did what we were just saying. I kind of would just squeeze down and just make sure I was rotating it 360 degrees, and continue to keep checking it.
Just catch it in a different spot each time.
If you don't want to do that because you don't want to make a mistake in that process, just find something that's similar size and make your own. You could use a Hypalon grips.
But if you're doing custom,
if you're doing custom ones,
you have to ream it out.
You can't do the slide on method.
No, there ain't no shoving it. You're gonna split it apart.
Yeah, because anything that
That's what she said.
Anything we've got a glue joint on, and we do not want to overstretch it because you'll bust that seam every time. So you got to bring that almost to the size. You can, obviously when you put the Pro Paste or your glue that you're using, it will lubricate it enough. You should be able to slide it down under like inch and a half. But you don't want to, if you've got a custom grip set, whether it's got an overlay on it, inlay, or it's got any kind of cuts and trims and stuff, you do not want to force it on there in any way, shape, or form. All right, guys, much love. Don't forget to use your discount code. Save 10% off on anything you want to get from Mudhole. That's CRB Pro Products, MHX, Gaho, or American Tackle.
Decorative 10.
Decorative 10 is the discount code. And if you watch me on any of the other social media platforms, Mary 10 is also another one you can use. You can't stack them, though, so you got to pick one or the other. And if you haven't checked it out, the live video for part 2 for Visual Wrap is now on YouTube. So if you were curious about how Visual Wrap works and wanted to learn how to use the program, part 1, which explains the entire program and how to use it, what all the buttons mean, and all yada, yada, yada. And then part 2 is how to make your own patterns. That's now there. So check it out, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube because it just helps us. Much love. Don't forget to check out thedecorativestudio.com to get fun merchandise. The Southern Rod Builder t-shirts are there. The Decorated t-shirts are there for the podcast. There's an apron there that Wes has created and some other fun stuff that's in there. Any builds or grips, I'm going to start dumping into that particular website that I have that I just built for fun and are going to sell them. There's none of that there yet, but you can follow that website and see any new updates that we have for it. So. And with that, let's wrap it up. So inspiration can be drawn from a whole bunch of different places. It can be, obviously, you can get inspired by what somebody else is doing. You can get ideas from what somebody else is doing. And then, if you just start watching other hobbyists or other, maybe you enjoy, maybe what you fall in love with when you start your rod building journey is making grips, right? So you can go look at the pin turners. You can go look at the knife makers. Anybody that's playing, even the bowl makers, anybody that's messing with wood, you can take some of their concepts and adapt it to what we are trying to do for our handles and our grips. And then maybe you fall in love with cork, and I'm so happy that this happened. We were talking about the gold leaf in the last episode, right? Mm-hmm. There's one gentleman that is working on, he took one of my ideas and he ran with it, and he is experimenting and been kept in the loop about what he's doing, and it's looking really, really cool. So I'm really excited that one of our shows actually is kind of creating some cool looking stuff. So he's going through the testing of it, and he's keeping me updated with it, and I was like, this is awesome, like, go for it, man. The other thing is, like, for the, maybe you fall in love with the marbling stuff, look into what they're doing with paint pours. Look into what they're doing with blow dryers. I forgot to talk about that. They take it and they put colors on there, and then they take a blow dryer and they whoosh, and it creates these cool things. I actually experimented a couple years ago when I was doing the paint pours. I took a chain because the kids broke it off of the fan, but the ceiling fan has the chains, and put a bunch of paint on blank. I didn't have any epoxy on it because I wasn't wasting the epoxy because I didn't know what it was going to look like. But I just did stripes of the color, and then I took the chain and laid it down, and I went zigzag, zigzag all the way around with it, and it kind of created a cool little look. That also came from somebody that was making tumblers. And I was like, paint pours, watching people do if you can find artists that are doing anything on a round object, Obviously, it's going to be a lot easier to adapt it, but you can take the concept of something that's from flat, like wood burning or something of that nature, and try to mimic what they're doing on round. Or not mimic, but like take, their shading techniques, because it's all education at that point. It's really cool to watch other artists and try to figure out how to incorporate it into rod building, because a lot of people are always like, how do you come up with the stuff that you do? I get inspired what other people are doing, then try to figure out how to apply it to what we're doing or to a theme. That's usually where most of my research comes in. It's a theme that I have to match to, and then it's like the graffiti set. I keep going back to that because that was an all-in. Like, I had to learn all the things with that one, and I had to teach myself how to do that. And I had, I bought books and I watched videos and I did the research and, went the whole spill of trying to figure out how to do the graffiti or the paint pours or the marbling, or watching the nail art stuff, trying to get inspired to do something I haven't seen before in our normal marbling builds. We see all the blending together. We see some of the alcohol inks. One person I really like what he does, and I think he does it with a lot of alcohol inks, is Chris Licht. I really like he was featured in our marbling episode, that lava one that he did. That one sticks out it looks amazing. But it's been fun to learn this stuff. So think outside the box, and we can take the stuff that we see from other hobbies, other crafters, and we can kind of modify it to fit to what we're doing. If you're looking for a certain look. I mean, gold leaf didn't start in rod building. That definitely started, somewhere else. There's a lot that you can take from other hobbies and other crafters and other artists and kind of apply it to what we're doing. So don't be scared to fall down the rabbit hole, if you will. Anyways, but thanks for hanging out with us tonight. It's been awesome. It's been fun. Hopefully some of these discussions, you can kind of take that little bit of advice and kind of run with it. I love to see people doing their own kind of individual styles, and I love to see people creating things and experimenting, because that means that the art, the craft, the hobby of rod building is just going to continue to keep expanding and growing, and that is the end goal. It's one of the reasons why I share all the things that I do, and I'll show you the fails and show you the successes, because in those fails and in those successes and always in between, somebody out there is going to get an idea and they're going to change it and they're going to adapt it and they're going to run off and branch into their own little thing. And that's the end goal, is to continue to keep evolving the craft so that more people get involved with it, more people get excited about it, and it continues to keep growing and it doesn't stagnate like it kind of got. It was very close to not continuing on some years ago. I could see it happening, and then it was like, all right, and it started to ramp back up again. So I'm really excited to see everybody venturing out from just the normal stuff, honestly. But with that said, y'all have a great night, and we'll chat later.